welcome to Novasia podcast. My name is Xinpei and I'm from China. I'm the media intern at Novasia magazine. So in today's video, we are going to talk about the inter-career relations with two guests who are also from Yonsei GSIS. So firstly, would you mind introducing yourself to our audiences?
So hi, I'm Louise. I'm from the UK. I studied Chinese with Korean studies at Oxford for my undergraduate, and I worked in Korean studies in research afterwards for 2 years. I'm also a first term Yonsei GSIS student now.
Hello, my name is Pablo. I'm from Mexico. I did business as my undergraduate, and I'm also first semester student at GSIS.
Thank you so much for coming today. And since we are going to talk about the relationship between North Korea and South Korea, and we are also going to share some of our own opinions upon the possibility of reunification of Korea. So firstly, I'd like to ask, what's the first time you knew about the two Koreas, and how did you feel when you first knew about the state of division of a country like this?
I think, it's hard to remember 100%, but I think that it was probably around, I feel like my political awakening was like 2015 probably. So I think that is also around the time that maybe North Korean nuclear threat is growing. So I think that was probably what first drew my attention to it. And I didn't really consider like the maybe humanitarian side at that point, like more like a security issue. But then like gradually as I became more interested in Korea, like South Korea as well, in that time I started to realize about like, oh, actually like this is a country, like one country separated into two. It has a lot of significance to the people of South Korea and North Korea who like see themselves as like one peoples but are like kind of politically split apart. So I think that was how I first thought about it.
I think for me, similar, I guess, during high school when you learn more about history, world history, and specifically about like after World War II, what happened. I guess that was the first time I heard about the two Koreas. Honestly, I feel like at the time, for us in our education in Mexico and probably like in that side of the world, is more focused on Germany and division of Germany. So that's what you hear a lot and you learn a lot. To be honest, I don't think I learned much from the division of South Korea and North Korea. I think it was later until I could come for the first time to Korea that I actually realized how big of an issue it was, which kind of, I feel bad because I learned about it when I was like 21. But I think around 2019 is when I learned about it.
So since we just shared our experiences of our first time knew about the existence of two Koreas, I'd like to ask you to share more information about North Korea that you ever know.
Yeah, I guess one thing that like gradually as I became more interested in East Asia, so I started to study at university. In UK schooling in general, we don't focus much on East Asia issues or Asia issues that much. We also focus on like European-centered history and maybe American-centered. So like I didn't really know about the Korean War for quite a long time. Like I'm also like embarrassed to say.
Same.
So when I was at Oxford, we had the Oxford Union, and like we have a lot of guest speakers come in, and in my first year we had a Korean defector come in to give a talk about their experience. And I think that was the moment that I realized also like how much of a human rights issue this is. Like it's more impactful when you hear someone's personal experience. And like, so it was a woman, they were smuggled out of North Korea, and then they had to hide and pretend that they were Chinese in North China. They had to kind of learn to speak, I don't know if it was Mandarin or the local dialect well enough that when authorities would come, she would be able to pass as like Chinese. It was shocking, like you know it on paper, but you see her experience, and that's when I really realized like, the economic situation of North Korea being so tough, women's place as well being tough. But and then after that, something else that I learned as well, I think it was in the Financial Times, there's an article about this, like they have actually like a sort of like small market system in North Korea, which is actually really propped up by women. So selling sometimes imported goods as well, and I think that was something really interesting. Like there is like kind of economic activity in North Korea that's going on, but like largely removed from the global system, right? So yeah.
That's actually quite interesting. I feel like for me, everything I've learned about North Korea has been more recently. Since I came to Korea first time 2019, I did an exchange, and that's when I took a class about Korean economic history, which included both South Korean, the Korean miracle, but also like North Korea comparatively, which was quite interesting to learn how North Korea had a higher GDP and like more resources than South Korea, like during the 70s still. Like that was quite impressive to learn. And I think because of Korean friends I met at the time and still Korean people I meet nowadays, some of them have these stories about like their grandfather being actually from towns near the border between North Korea and South Korea, but North Korea, and they got separated because they fought for the South and their families are still in the North. And I remember I heard like at least 3 of these stories where they told me like, yeah, my grandfather's wish was to see their brothers, their siblings again, and they could never do it, which I've actually followed a bit more about that on the news of how many people die each year that still have some ties with North Korea. And that number is, of course, getting so much smaller. And for me, it's just, I don't know, kind of sad of like seeing that if all of these people die, then probably there's no relationship beyond that anymore, you know? So, but yeah, about like economic situation, all of that, I feel like I've learned more about recent times, university classes, just how the dictatorship, yeah, probably since high school, but I think you never give much thought about that when you're living so far from here.
Are people in your country able to travel to North Korea? Because I know people from South Korea, they are forbidden to go there in recent years. There was a time they were able to travel there, but in recent years they are forbidden to go there.
Yeah, I think that people can go on the the formally organized tours, but like it's really highly advised not to by the UK Foreign Office. It's advised not to go there because you might not come back. Yeah.
I guess I'm actually not sure, but I guess people from Mexico could also visit formerly with the tours. I think now there's no, because I remember meeting people also in China, like foreign people that had been to North Korea in these tours that go from China actually to visit North Korea. And I'm pretty sure Mexican people could also join these tours. But from what I know now, no one's going to North Korea now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure about
because
UK.
After Corona, they sealed the borders. Even people from China, we can't go there. Should we move to a little bit deeper level, like a little bit more political level?
Yes.
Let's talk about the current leader of North Korea. So as we all know, the current leader of North Korea is Kim Jong-un, right? Do you know anything about this person, and what kind of person do you think he is?
Honestly, only what we see in the media when he shows somewhere in the world, or like for example now, I think the most recent, him going to Russia to speak with Vladimir Putin. My perspective, or that's in general, but I feel people that are in power for a long time, most of the time are not good. It's just like a power hunger that just keeps feeding on itself, and then these people don't leave. So it's very hard to maintain good power for the people if you're the only one in power. So my perspective when I see this man is like a very obsessed person with this control, with the family legacy in a way, right? Because it's like in a way like a dynasty, right? Like the time he stops being the man in power in North Korea, he's going to have like a successor. When I see him, it's just, I see that. I see someone that is power hungry, that it's not living the country. There's no democracy, there's no way of changing just because he's in power. And I see him that as a very selfish person, as a very obsessive person. That's like my general perspective.
Yeah, I also have a similar sense of like strong ego there, because like, I mean, I understand, like I feel like it becomes like maybe a moral plight in the idea, in the like head of these leaders that see themselves as like, you know, fighting the war against America, against Westernism. So they kind of, we kind of in a checkmate with Kim Jong-un, right? Because like no one will ever back down. Like the West will not back down, you know, America will not back down from their stance. But at the same time, Kim Jong-un is backed up by Russia and China. So he like also will never back down. So there is this like egoism of like, I put the like my international stance maybe above the well-being of the country. Yeah, it's like quite a family affair, right? I think his sister is also a very big like power player in North Korea. So yeah, I think there's this idea of legacy, the idea of trying to maybe stick to some sort of ideological claim of communism, you know, unfortunately at the expense of the daily lives of the people probably. But I also think it's important to point out that like you said, like about the capital, like it's not, you know, it's not totally impoverished also, and some people are probably living fine lives in North Korea, but yeah, I don't know that everyone is, so yeah.
Do you know any family members of the Kim family?
I know about like the sister. His father was like the previous, right, dictator, if, yeah, that's the word I would say. I think also in the recent news, there was like kind of a bit big here in South Korea, where he had an event, and his daughter was there also, kind of like presenting to the world in a way. So, but that's as far as I know. I honestly don't know much about like the whole history of his family.
Yeah, I always have the image of Kim Jong-un as well in my head when they met at the parallel, right? The South Korean and North Korean leaders.
Do you know his elder brother who was assassinated a few years ago?
I know.
You know
I read about it. If I'm not mistaken, it was in the airport in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Right, in Kuala Lumpur. Which, when I read, I was like kind of fascinated, because from what I gather, it was this man that did not want to be in the power of North Korea. He didn't want to be the next leader of North Korea, and he actually smuggled a lot of things into North Korea. Like he was interested in outside, like, but very like banal is that they were like stuff. Yeah, I mean, he traveled, like he had a fake passport, right? So he could travel outside, or like he was not in North Korea, I mean.
Yeah, he flies between Macau and Malaysia often.
Often, yeah. That's what I remember reading.
Recently, it reported that the economy in North Korea is not optimistic. And do you think the regime of Kim family will collapse in a short time, or at least before Kim Jong-un's death in this third generation?
I mean, this is my personal opinion, with honestly, as much as I know at the moment, I would hope not, in the way, because at the moment, if it collapses, or before it's going to collapse, my opinion would be that he would probably do anything to keep that power, meaning either war or something else, which would be just catastrophic for the entire world. So I feel like the moment that collapse is getting closer, people with power just tend to scratch and like try to grab it as much as they can, right? So I would hope not, because it means war for me. And if it does collapse without a war, then I would also feel like there would be this vacuum of like having to replace something, or and either something worse could come, or it would just mean that a lot of people would suffer. So like, I don't know, like right now I don't have an answer to what would be the best for the world and also for North Korean people, but I don't know if it would collapse.
Yeah, I don't I don't actually foresee it collapsing because I think that North Korea is such a key geopolitical location for China and Russia. You know, it's almost, I think, more sensitive than Senkaku Island issues or South China Sea issues. Like, I think that North Korea, because it's the land bridge between, like, up to northeast China and so near Russia, it's just in such a situation of deadlock that it's not that much about Kim Jong-un and what Kim Jong-un actually wants, but it's actually about what do China and Russia want and what does the US want. I think it could be a nice idealist world if South Korea and North Korea reunite under probably the South Korean system, and South Korea adopts a similar development model that it took after the Korean War in South Korea. But that would pose such an issue for the proximity of basically America. I don't even think that, you know, China and Japan see it as like a proximity of South Korea, but a proximity of America suddenly being on the peninsula, that would cause such big issues that I don't think it's in this lifetime, maybe. I don't know.
I didn't think it that way, honestly, and it makes total sense that, yeah, it's a position where if there was to be a reunification, right? It's such a position where you can see China or like Russia, China versus the US versus Western, that the moment, yeah, like having them just next door would probably mean like a threat to this country. So it's definitely a geopolitical issue as well. Very hard to even think about a solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to give in either side, and yeah, sadly it's just like a regime that may last longer than we think.
You know, Kim Jong-un is a person who is obsessed with nuclear weapon, right? He has put a lot of efforts in developing their nuclear program. Do you think he's smart, or do you think he's a wise person because he focuses on developing nuclear program to survive their regime, right?
I don't know if I would describe him as smart or wise, but I mean, he is in power and he definitely has a way of, maybe a smart way to keep having this regime in North Korea. The nuclear development, their nuclear program, I feel it's both scary and sad. I understand it's about power. Nuclear is always about power. Even a lot of countries right now, like West and also like this side, China or Russia, they have nuclear presence, which just overall for me, being like such idealistically pacifist person, find it as a threat to the whole world. Ideally, no one should have like this power or even have been developed, which sadly was used. So just the idea of North Korea developing this program to keep power, to keep being this hermetic, isolated, scary nation, is just makes it harder for the development of any relationship with them, right?
Yeah, I think there was it was a smart move. This word, not in a positive way, but yes, it was a smart move to acquire basically the most impactful power asset that one can have in the world. I think it's really worrying when you think about it, but also like it's important to remember like this technology didn't just come from anywhere, right? Like it's definitely collaboration with North Korean allies that will allow for this development. So it's not only like a clever move of Kim Jong-un, and like we can't necessarily guarantee to accredit it to Kim Jong-un, but it's definitely somewhere within North Korea's alliance system, someone was clever to protect their borders or something, or their like close geopolitical key locations via this sort of development of technology for North Korea. But yeah, I just think that, for example, like the Trump Kim Jong-un interactions and things like that. They just seem almost cartoon-like. Like, I just think they're just...
Childish.
They're just, yeah, it's just like such scary ways of talking about like such hugely devastating weapons, right? So
it's crazy to think sometimes like people that are in power can be so careless. Of course, everyone has their own interests, but like to not be able to see for a common ground. This interaction, for example, so childish, so scary even, you know? It's like, okay, these people are running countries that are impactful in the world and anything can happen just because of that.
So here comes the most concerned question is, do you think it's possible that there's going to be a reunification of Korea in the future?
Oh, I want it so much. Like, I really think that it would be so meaningful to the people themselves. I mean, like, if we can only look at the facts, well, you know, you see the current Yoon administration is taking a more hardline stance towards North Korea, right? It's taking a conservative view, sidelining with the US. The path is headed away from unification right now, right? I think that South Korea, you know, doesn't want to aid this system, because this is like the dilemma that South Korea faces, right? Because they have some, you know, a strong economy. They are able to send aid to South Korea in the form of like food or other resources that are non-militarized resources, and they do that. But how can it move beyond just like some humanitarian aid when the political climate is reaching a boiling point between China and the US, Russia and the US, Russia and the West in general? And I think because China is providing us like a second economic center, so like, you know, we have different allies to China that you have to the US in general, although there is crossover. North Korea is also almost becoming in a less precarious position because China's economic power is so useful. So I think that it would only be possible if the Kim regime decide to reunify with South Korea, as in they back down and they admit their defeat. But then if we think about what we've discussed about Kim Jong-un, we don't expect that to happen, right? So I don't see, maybe if the regime collapsed, I don't see how it could change. Because, you know, people always say like, you know, Soviet Union collapses because of economic pressure, right? But North Korea has economic pressure and nothing much is happening. So I don't know if our system, like even the current world system, is volatile enough at the moment to actually lead to some kind of collapse in North Korea, which leads to reunification with South Korea. I don't know if it's possible. Yeah, sorry, that was a long answer.
Very interesting, honestly, to hear. And I find it very sad to say that I think it will never be reunified. I would really hope and really wish that I was wrong, that the countries could to be one Korea again. I remember when I was in the DMZ, the closest place to North Korea and South. There's this flag of South Korea with wishes of people around the world, and I remember one specific one that was written by a German that said, "If we did it, I know you can do it too." And I almost cried like when I read that, because it's sad. Like the only country that was not reunified after the war was Korea.
Actually,
you know,
China and Taiwan also.
Well,
As
yeah,
unified.
but that's another topic, I would say. But you know, Germany, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, it was very hard for the people too. I think there were a lot of economic challenges and social challenges where the West did not want to reunify with like the East. Things that you can even see now in German society, or from my perspective when I met some German people. You see Vietnam, and Vietnam also reunified, but you can see the challenges they're facing even in their country with the development. So, I mean, for me it's very sad to say, but to think about reunification is like the last chance is now, almost, where there's still people living that have ties with North Korea. Because the moment this last generation, like their grandparents, right, like our age, Korean people that are like our age that have grandfathers still living with some ties, the moment they die, that's like the last link. Because even young Koreans, when I talk to them, most of them don't have like this feeling of wanting to reunify. They even think it's like a really bad idea, which I get economically.
Yes.
Would be catastrophic. It's like, where do you start, right? And also the people, I feel like they less and less feel connected, even though I find it very sad. They're the same people, like ethnically and with a lot of shared history. So it's very sad to say that here in South Korea they're also like have lost that connection, right? And the last thread of that connection is that generation that is almost gone. So I truly think, I wish I was, or hopefully I'm wrong, but I don't think reunification can happen.
I think it's true also that like North and South Koreans like maybe don't identify sometimes as much as we think that they do. Like we want the like heartwarming story of like, oh, North and South Korean people really want to reunify, but the government stop them. You know, like arbitrary political factors are stopping the will of the people from being achieved. But also like an interesting case actually from the UK in London we have a big North Korean community in New Malden. And sorry, not just North Korean, we have a North Korean and South Korean population. It's kind of like a small gathering of Korean peoples, but actually like North Koreans and South Koreans live very separate in London. So like even though they live in the same area, there'll be like a Korean Saturday school for North Koreans and like a Korean Saturday school for South Koreans. So like actually I think that what you were saying about that like kind of the familial ties being important to keep North and South Korea identifying with each other is actually very true, because I don't think that those North Korean and South Korean population in London also have much familial ties. So I think that's why they kind of live apart in their own, they see themselves as from like maybe separate cultures actually. So yeah, if you think about it, it's been now 80 years since the Korean War, so 80 years since, and before that Korea was under Japanese occupation, right? So it wasn't really a time of, I mean actually it kind of did prompt a lot of national developments of the Korean identity, but also it was a tumultuous time as well, so it maybe wasn't the time that they felt super unified. There were stratifications within society in other ways as well. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree completely. It's just that window of reunification really, it's like, maybe it's not the best example, but we have World War II, and the only impact, the biggest thing about World War II was the atomic bombs, and the people in Japan that lived through that are still alive are also dying, right? And it's so important to, I mean, we know the impact, we know how bad it can is, but we didn't live. The only like testimonials are the living people. So once they die, if it's not properly recorded, if it's not properly shared, this feeling, then it's kind of lost. Like it goes away, and then people keep, I mean, we're humans, so we repeat the same mistakes. So it's kind of my example to these North Korea, South Korea relations, where these families are the last link, and once they're gone, then the same mistakes will just happen. There's just no way of unifying, there's no common ground, it's hard to find that reunification, that, oh, we're the same people and we want to be together. I don't know if the people would actually even feel, even North Korea, as Louise said, like, is there the link? Is like people wonder, would people here want to reunify? It's too hard to tell. Probably not.
Yeah.
Do you know any actions that South Korean government has ever taken to facilitate the reunification of Korea, like the last president, Moon Jae-in.
I only know that there used to be these meetings for the families from North and South to meet at the border. I think they were doing them every few years, and people had to apply, and it was like a long process. But I believe since 2018, they have not happened again. Yeah, the window for reunification is very slim, very very hard.
Yeah, this is also the main one that I knew, just the meeting of leaders as like a, I guess just a symbolic nod to the link
Peace.
between the two countries. But yes, nothing, I don't know if anything like much that was very, also like substantial. Right? I mean, maybe you can tell us something.
Actually, I also don't know. I also don't know much about it, but I do know the last president, Moon Jae-in, he tries to facilitate the reunification, and he and his wife, they visited North Korea, and also Kim Jong-un and his wife, they visited South Korea. So at that time, the relationship between North Korea and South Korea was so close, and people are being friendly to each other. Because, recently, the Asian Games is taking place in China, right?
Yes.
And there are also some North Korean athletes in the Asian Games, and some of them even won the gold medals. And a few days ago, I watched a news on YouTube. It was a video that some South Korean journalists, they want to do a short interview with the North Korean athletes, so they called them to stop for a while. So can you say something to us? Oh, sorry. They just ignored them and they went straight away. There was a little girl, she who is a gymnast, and she's from North Korea, and she won the gold medal. After the game, the South Korean journalist asked her to say something in front of the camera, and I think she wanted to say things, but she just hesitated for a while, and she still left, and she said 죄송합니다. She said sorry in front of the camera, and I feel so sad watching this, because in last Asian Games, which was 5 years ago, I also noticed that the relationship between North Korean athletes and the South Korean athletes was so close, and they even built deep friendship with each other. I think that's also related to
Wasn't it
the relationship between
like
the
some
governments.
Olympics ago, so like not the last ones, the previous ones, where North Korea and South Korea, and they had to join the teams to play in the Olympics. I remember I think in the, if I'm not mistaken, in the Winter Games here in South Korea, for like hockey or some, like I could be wrong, but I remember reading about it, like they joined for like the same, to make one team to play as like Korea, like in general. And I thought that was like, of course, like in sports, there's always like these stories where people like are very human in a way, like with each other. That's just beautiful. And that's when you see that they're just like people, right? And they like what they grow up with or how they are living. It doesn't mean that they're bad people, or it's just there's nothing more like to know if that's the only way you grow up, right? So I also read about these Asian Games and North Korea's system, but really it's just, I wish their relation could be a bit more, if not reunified, just pacific and friendly,
Are there any solutions you can think of to facilitate a peaceful reunification of Korea? Do you think there are any possible solutions that can make these two countries become a union again?
Maybe the most peaceful way, and not talking specifically about reunification, is just developing closer ties, having a peaceful relationship between the countries. Yeah, maybe I think that would be the way to go. Accept that the countries are separated and just different cultures have grown out of it, or different ways of living, and there can be a common ground, and I think that can be developed definitely between both to be peaceful with each other, to maybe even travel with each other, right? Within each other.
This was just a speculation, I guess, but I agree, like maybe like the step of reunification, like, you know, ratifying a treaty is maybe like a really too far away to think about thing. But yeah, I agree, like there's some steps, for example, like there be a relaxing of the control of media? So well, I mean, actually, like South Korea also is not rated, is not reviewed as having a very free media either. But like if there were to be like more exchange of information between South Korea and North Korea more freely, that could be something useful. I mean, if there could also be like a tourism, you know, establishment of tourism, I actually think that goes really, really far to improve relations between people and public image in countries, like tourism initiatives. And also like we saw this a little bit before the pandemic, was like you know, K-pop stars going to North Korea, like Red Velvet went to perform in Pyongyang. And you know, even like sports initiatives as well, like if only like, you know, if North Korea and South Korea ever presented another unified team as well, like I wouldn't even, you know, I don't even feel that reunification is so necessary, but just like just some sort of like relaxing, like acknowledgement of common ground. Because I know, and I thought about this as well, like in South Korea it's common, like said, like even if people don't feel like connected family wise or whatever, they're like, North Korea is the only other place in the whole world that speaks Korean and uses Korean writing, right? So they have that shared common ground. But then like you can think about like English in the world, like so many places in the world speak English and write English, but like doesn't mean that we feel super connected to those countries, right? So I think that, like, you know, there's such a, because there can always be communication between the two countries and the two peoples, like it's such a good opportunity for interaction between the two peoples. But whether, I don't know now how reunification could be achieved, like what specific steps would be achieved, but just like this relaxing of tension between the countries and acknowledgement of their similarities rather than, you know, emphasis on differences is always a positive start in like improving any relations between any countries, right? So
Right.
Actually, I thought about a solution is like being the same as the UK, like make the Kim Jong-un the kingdom and then
like the monarchy.
Yeah,
Oh.
a little bit like that. Is that possible? Do you
Wow. You know what? Maybe.
I never thought about it.
No, I never thought about it.
Finding a common ground.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's always
He's still the king. You can
Yeah.
always be the king, but that those Korean people be free. Yeah.
I mean, that's
Wow.
Maybe that, but we don't know what's gonna happen, because you know the existence of, you know, the what you just said about it, like Russia and China.
Alliances.
Alliance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another
Oh
difficulty.
gosh.
Yeah.
No, I like that idea quite a lot actually, because it's like, yeah, like Kim Jong-un and his family are like a symbol, but they don't have much influence.
Yeah.
Like, and then South Korean administration like uses their kind of economic maneuvering capabilities for the rest of the country. That's so interesting.
Let's give us assumption, like if there's really gonna be a reunification of Korea, what kind of impact will it have to Korean people's life, including North Korean people and South Korean people, in your perspective?
if it were to ever happen, there would be to need a strong willingness to be open and change, like to think, to have this in both sides, really, like from what you grow up with North Koreans, what they learn, but also South Koreans, they also have their own way of developing their thinking because they grew up here. So if it were to happen, the biggest challenge was, okay, now truly we have to find a way to unify the people, right? Change how they view each other, change how they treat each other, then would other aspects be definitely involved, like economic and who would need to do what, but that's just complicated.
Yeah, I read about this also before, like this idea that South Korea like uses its economy to develop and prop up North Korea if there were the case of unification. But also I read, and I think everyone knows, like it would be a really big strain on the South Korean economy, because I hope this is right. There's not so much natural resources in North Korea. I think that is it this way around? The soil is less fertile, or the soil is less fertile here?
From what I've learned, it's the other way around.
Okay.
So like when Koreas were divided, North Korea kept all the natural resources, and South Korea was left with none. So that's why they developed other industries.
Okay, let me change my answer. But the kind of useful thing is that there is some, there could be like natural resources or more like fertile. I think there's more fertile land in North Korea in this case then. So like there could be also some long-term positives for the economy, but in the short term it would require high spending. That would be really strenuous on the South Korean economy, from what I have read before. And then I also just had a thought, like imagine if North Korea and South Korea unify, and then they have a election and there's two candidates. One is a North Korean candidate, for example, and one is South Korean. Or maybe there's more, but some are from South Korea and some are North Korea, because the identities will be very separate, at least at the start of reunification. And then I guess that South Korean population will probably have more, greater numbers. So they will probably end up with if they continue with a system as it is of elections, they will end up with a South Korean heavy government. And then I think you'll have like a big sort of, maybe even something comparable to like Israel-Palestine kind of conflict, where you have like two distinct like groups that identify as different, and neither one feels like they're receiving their fair treatment, because they see like how reunification has damaged them in one way or another, because these big changes like no one's ever 100% happy, and like public dissatisfaction is so difficult to deal with that it will be very tumultuous at the start, but the long-term implications could be very, very good, but very long-term, 100 years or more. Like,
so the final question is, if there's really gonna be a reunification, what kind of impact do you think it will have to your own country?
That's interesting. I would think that there's definitely, with the world being more interconnected, it would be a big news about a reunification. Honestly, I feel like we're on the other side of the world. Mexico, even though K-pop is actually quite a growing industry in Mexico and Latin America now, and some industries are also quite developed, like car industry in Mexico from Korea, I don't think it goes farther than that. Whereas like if there's something happening here, would like positively or negatively affect Mexico. Definitely, if like there's an economic strain or constraint in South Korea because of that, then relationships with other countries would be affected in the world. But yeah, apart from that, I don't see like a strong effect on Mexico, at least. I guess.
I think that maybe global trust in the stability of the Korean Peninsula immediately after the reunification would be low. At least in the case of the UK, I think post-Brexit, we're looking outside of Europe for more trade partners, and UK and South Korea have struck some trade deals since Brexit, and South Korea is, I think it's approximately 17th biggest trade partner for the UK. It's definitely in the top 20, and it's been rising in the last few, or over the years. It's become a bigger and bigger trade partner. But I think that the growth might halt if there were reunification and there was such a big change. And I think it would depend how much South Korean government and influence like retained its power in South Korea, in reunified Korea, because I think that like a lot of West or the global North, we see like South Korea as a big ally, and we see North Korea as like a completely like cannot even communicate with them level of kind of not enemy, but you know, someone that's just not doing the same, operating in the same system as us at all. So I think that actually it might negatively impact the trade agreements and trust between UK and South Korea if there was reunification. But in the same way, it could bring down the pressure of North Korean threat, so that could be a positive thing. So yeah.
For me, I think no matter there is a reunification or not, the most important thing is that people in North Korea and South Korea, they can live a happy and healthy and a peaceful life. Yeah. This is the most important thing. So I think it doesn't matter if there's gonna be a reunification. At least people can live a free, happy and healthy life. That's all matters in my perspective.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I kind of support South Korean appeasement policy towards North Korea. I know why like international sanctions exist, but also like the squeeze that they put on the people's lives instead of the political life, like is just so tough to deal with.
Yeah, like we keep making the same mistake. I mean, we're humans, and there's so much history, and if you study history, it's just humans repeating the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah.
Whereas I agree, like these sanctions, we saw it like World War One, where everyone blamed Germany, and then World War Two happened because of that, and then World War Two blamed Germany, Japan, or like, and this causes like a lot of suffering for people, and not just like we forget that like government and people are not the same, in my opinion, right? Like everyone deserves like to be healthy, happy, have enough to eat, right? So if there's reunification of not, if people are okay, then that's the most important. But of course, might not be the case right now.
Yeah, it's easy. It's really easy to say, but it's so hard to like. How do you make your sanctions only affect the government? That's the hardest thing. Yeah.
Right. It's just. Yeah, I mean, we. It's just so hard to come up with a solution or answers for these kind of problems, but in an ideal world.
That's all of my questions I got for today. Yeah. Is there anything you want to add in this video?
No, it's not everything.
Then
yes, I think I said everything.
Okay, then thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye.